Hi, Liz. It's Brian with this box, Mind's Eye. So we're just having a conversation here about your experience with Mind's Eye introspection. Are you taking the Mind's Eye harmonized too, or just the microdose one?
Right now, I am not. I was actually thinking of doing that with my next order. And Britt, who is the person who introduced me to Mind's Eye,
Yep.
had recommended it just as a daily supplement, essentially on my off days to take that
Hmm.
to just keep the mushrooms in my system and obviously not the introspective compound, but just to supplement and support myself with the normal like everyday benefits of lion's mane and that sort of thing and chaga and all those other mushrooms that are included in your mix.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how did you discover Mind's Eye in medicine box?
Yeah, my business coach and Brent Hankinson is one of your co-creators, partners. I'm not entirely 100% clear on the
Friend,
relationship there.
friend, housemate, she started with medicine box like during the medicinal cannabis days,
Yeah,
California.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So she kind of has been weaving through the brand.
Right.
The
I
year.
know she's
Yeah.
done some projects with you guys
Yeah.
before. So she introduced me and got me connected to the product. And at the time, it was really just you. And it was something that I was just kind of experimenting with and didn't really have expectations around.
Hmm.
AB had mentioned it and talked it up and really praised psilocybin as this wonderful tool to help support you being your most embodied human and in your healing. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, that sounds intriguing. It's kind of like what I'm about right now.
Hmm.
So I started working with it in the beginning of the year and, went in with, again, little expectations and was pleasantly surprised by the impact that I felt. And it was relatively immediate within the first week or two, just a feeling of more peace and ease in my mind and my body, a greater sense of resonance in my thoughts and my actions actually aligning, and a deeper sense of trust and just knowing that what is on my heart and my mind is meant to be there and that I can move from that space without doubting myself.
Hmm.
So those were really beautiful impacts, again, without walking into it with any real intention.
Hmm.
And the first time around, like I didn't really have, I just kind of took it in the morning like a supplement. Like I didn't make it into this meaningful ritual for myself. Not that you have to, but I since have, and in the protocol I'm doing now, it is much more intentional. And I do breath work and meditation, and I journal, and it's this really lovely time, not every day, but on my on days where I get to, be with myself and sit in reflection and have a conversation with the medicine and, you know, pray into what I'm hoping to get from it or the things I'm looking for support in. So it's really evolved for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's evolved in a way that you came in with no expectations, and you're combining it with I call them behavioral exercises or lifestyle changes, and you
Mm-hmm.
get the you get the maximum benefit out of the supplement when you're combining it with those behavioral exercises like breath work, yoga, journaling, quiet contemplation. So
Mm-hmm.
you're tackling it from all different angles. Now, when you came into using the Mind's Eye, um, you didn't have any expectations, but like, what was your life before that? Were you trying to work through certain changes in your life, recover from, relationships, jobs, addictions, stress, anxiety,
Sure.
all the things in the human experience where you might have been looking for something to help excel that process for you? Or were you just like, hey, let's just give this a shot? I want to try, you know?
Definitely the former. So I'm actually a widow. My first husband died over a decade ago. So I'm just kind of arriving in the place where I am grounded enough and have the resources and the capabilities, both mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, to really do the healing work that comes with that kind of trauma and that kind of loss. It was very
Mm.
unexpected. He was essentially killed by someone else in a hit and run accident. So it was a big event in my life, more than just, I mean, obviously it's shitty no matter what, but it was not expected. He wasn't sick. Nothing like that happened. So it was very just completely, brain altering in terms of how I actually function and how I process information and how I relate to the world. So I've been living in a trauma response basically for a decade, and just trying to kind of survive, and finally got sick of living that way. And it hadn't been working for a long time. That really only works for the first couple of years when you genuinely are in survival mode. And so choosing to say, you know what, like I'm done allowing myself to be overdetermined by this event that happened in my life, and I'm ready to take a little bit more responsibility for what I want my life to look like, and take a little bit more ownership over my choices, so it doesn't feel like, oh well, this happened to me and so it's okay that I did this thing. Not that I was living some like misaligned terrible life. I've been doing what I love doing. I have a good life, all those things, but there was definitely this deeper feeling of disconnection, misalignment, lack of self-trust, lack of self-love, lack of deeper intimacy and connection in my life because of the things that I had experienced. And I finally had to say, okay, we're going to sit down, we're going to do this work, and we're going to do this healing, and we're going to sit with the things that have happened to us, and work through them and work with them and come to terms with our story, and come back to a place of feeling loving when I think about myself, and feeling trusting when I think about myself, and feeling grounded and safe instead of feeling erratic and unstable and just kind of like rolling with the punches. And so, yes, there was definitely a shift within the last, from this point, like year and a half, where it was like, okay, we can't do this anymore. This doesn't work. I'm about to lose my mind. I have to change something. And so working with Anne Britt was one of the pieces of that very big puzzle. So I've been a movement teacher. I teach yoga and Pilates for about a decade, and I'm wanting to kind of expand that offering into more embodiment coaching. And so when I decided to start my own business, I hired Anne Britt, and she, I think just kind of like mentioned that she works with Mind's Eye. And then I was like, ooh, that sounds interesting. Let's see what this does. So again, there was a little intention, but nothing, I didn't go into it with ritual. I didn't go into it with purpose. I didn't go to it with journaling or anything. It was just, we're going to do this thing.
Yeah.
And then having the impact that I had and feeling the experiences that I felt, and especially since, to be clear, it's not like I've been sitting around for a decade doing nothing and twiddling my thumbs. The things I've been doing just have only worked to a certain degree and have only made so much of an impact. And, so I'm starting to bring on more resources like Mind's Eye. I also started doing an EMDR therapy, which is therapy that specifically targets trauma in the brain to help you heal and process that trauma. So I'm doing all these things to support myself on this journey. And for me, this one, Mind's Eye has made the biggest visceral impact in just how I feel, and how I feel, not just in my body and my mind, but just in myself, in my spirit. I feel more connected. I feel more in tune. I feel more aligned. And a byproduct of all of that, and kind of it all sort of builds on top of each other, as I take care of myself more and I nurture myself more. And then you kind of get, I don't want to say addicted because that has a negative connotation, but you just, personally, I feel so full in my life and so grateful. And it's not like everything's peachy keen and everything's roses. There's still stuff going on, but I feel so grounded and confident in my ability to navigate it. And so trusting of myself and my ability to keep myself safe and grounded and supported and ask for what I need. And a lot of that has come with a lot of hard work and rewiring in my brain. And so much of it has landed in my body in such a powerful way because of this medicine. And because I've been giving myself this extra layer of support that's actually working on like a biological level that I don't even notice on a day to day. It just all of a sudden I'm like, huh, I'm not doing that thing anymore that I used to do as a trauma response. Interesting. And, to be clear, like you said, it can work magic by itself, obviously, because that's what happened the first time. But when you really bring yourself to it in a deeper way, like this round, this protocol that I'm finishing up in about a week and a half, has been so much more intense and so much more palpable in just feeling a shift in my energy and how I'm showing up for myself and how I'm showing up for my clients and in my relationships, that it's very clear that when you put in the effort and don't just take what the medicine is offering and you give to it as well, it's so expansive. And again, this is only the second time I've worked with Mind's Eye, and I assume over time you kind of figure out how you work with it, and you figure out your groove, and you figure out what works for you and what time of day feels best and what ritual feels most nourishing. So I'm excited, in a few months, the next time I decide to start back up in a protocol, to really feel super like, okay, I know what works for me. I found my rhythm and here's what I'm working on. And to just approach it from this really lovely space of knowing how much I can get from it. Because again, it's really just kind of been this experiment. And um, it's really, really exciting to think about how much more potentiality there is with this. So,
Mm. I, that's amazing. Thank you, Liz. I like what you said about uh, let the medicine work for you, but work for the medicine, right? And
mhm.
like a two-way street. And that's the deep introspection I think that you already have. First of all, like you brought a lot of self-awareness to the medicine, and that your approach to it wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to take this pill to get to that. I call that the wisdom gap. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to take this to get to that, but there's a threshold in between there that you need to cross over or jump down into the canyon. um, and you're doing the work in the canyon, uh, falling down to the canyon floor and having to climb back
Yeah,
again.
I like that imagery. That's
Yeah,
good.
it's like it's the wisdom gap. I call it the wisdom gap between us and mental health, or you and mental health. You being like, broadly speaking, and
hmm
it's really, there's no difference of, whether it's a Mind's Eye microdose capsule in one hand and a Xanax in the other hand. It's like, if you're not going to have the intention behind it, or the self-awareness and doing, the proverbial, the work, to working with the medicine and letting the medicine work with you. That's super potent. And bringing your level of self-awareness without any expectations, I think, is really important for people to hear, because um, having no expectations allows you to really embody like the journey or the moment,
hmm
and that
hmm
the current state of being, of like accepting whatever comes up. And your experience, I think, it's a great story for people to hear, because there is a lot of loss in people's lives and people have a hard time letting go. The trauma that stems from that, the compounded grief that we may not have dealt with, and it's like,
hmm
in the last 10 years, obviously you've done enough to deal with that experience, but you were looking for something something else, and to level up and take the next step, right? And go a little bit deeper, or get in that introspective framework. And, I think it's um, pretty awesome that you're taking it in that way. I had no idea what your story was, but thank you for sharing. Uh,
Yeah.
it's, grief is it's a beast, it's something that
Hmm.
I am not sure we ever get over. I think
No,
it
I
becomes,
don't think so.
from my personal experience, I was grieving this morning. I woke up with anxiety, and I lost my dog, my husky, over like a year and a half ago, last May, and she was like the love of my life, right? This
Hmm.
little being of hope and love and unconditional, connection. And I just saw a husky right before this call, and um, I just can't get it out of my head. At times it comes in, and then it's like, okay, like it's just still there. So
Yep.
um, learning how to organize our thoughts and our emotions, and another thing that you said to reflect back is like navigating life, and having trust in yourself. I think a lot of people have a hard time trusting in themselves, right? And we look towards the external world, right, to either validate us or tell us
Hmm.
like, this is what you should be doing, Liz, or and how many times have we collectively abandoned ourselves, right, and like not trusted in like that innate wisdom that we have. And what I heard is that the level of self-awareness that you brought to the medicine is just now heightened a lot more and amplified in a way that you're like, your relationships are stronger, you're showing up for your clients, and really, like, in order to be able to do that, it means you're really showing up for yourself. And
Hmm.
I think um that's all we can really all wish for, is like showing up for ourselves better. So um with that said, you mentioned the word protocol. Like, what's like what's kind of like your day look like, or your routine with the medicine? Like, I always,
Sure.
everybody is different, and every body is different, and protocol is really kind of a loose word. That
Term. Yeah.
I like to think of it more as a journey, because everyone's different, and you're playing around with like, okay, what time of day am I taking it? Like, am I going to do it then journal, or whatever it might be, like the different combinations and that
Hmm.
frequency and consistency of the round, you mentioned. So speak towards that a bit.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is letting go of it being exactly the same every day and giving myself the space to make it work with my life. Because initially there was definitely like, okay, I'm going to do it first thing in the morning. I'm going to do it this way. And then if that didn't happen, I got annoyed or angry at myself for like not getting up early enough to make it happen. And it was like, okay, this is kind of self-defeating in a sense. And I'm making it something that I'm like adding to this list of things to do instead of this experience that I get to have with myself. And once I let go of needing to do it exactly the same way every time I ingest, it has given me a lot more freedom and just allowed it to be what it is instead of, again, like just another box that I need to check off. So, generally it is something that I like to do first thing in the morning, but I do teach fitness. And so sometimes my mornings start really early. And if I don't sleep well, I'm going to push the alarm clock as much as I can. And, so like sometimes I'm laying in bed basically fighting myself, like, okay, well, when can I do my thing if I don't do it now? And so for me, again, ideally, it's part of my morning routine. And if not, if I have an early client, it's the first thing I do when I get back home. And that works for me. And so, on those days where it doesn't happen, I give myself grace. I let it be what it is because I don't want to feel rushed. And that's really what it is at the end of the day. It's not that I couldn't do it, but I want to feel spacious. in my ritual with my medicine. And I want to feel like if my brain and my nervous system, my body want to journal for 45 minutes, they can. And I don't have to put a time limit on it. So, you know, for me, I typically start with breath work and meditation, which is something that I do every day, even if I'm not ingesting. And I sit down and, sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 25 minutes, sometimes it's 40. And it really just depends on what my nervous system needs. And after I've done some of that integration work, I also tend to ingest with legacy cacao. So I kind of combine my cacao medicine ritual with my mind's eye medicine ritual, and I drink cacao on a daily basis. So even when I'm not on an on day, that's part of my thing. But I make my cacao and I generally start that ritual with a prayer. And if I'm also ingesting, it's my dose is in like a little bowl that I use to hold it while I'm in ceremony until I actually ingest. And so I pray over the cacao and I pray over the mind's eye. And then I sit down on my meditation cushion and I continue to write, because I usually start to journal right after my meditation. Like I'll put whatever like thought starters on the paper, and then I'll go make my drink and then come back and write. And once the cacao cools off a little bit, then I ingest. And so I sit there and I drink and I journal, and I've usually got, some vibey binaural music in the background, and I've got incense lit. And so I really do create this, for me, nurturing space. I like incense. I like binaural beats. I like to sit on the floor on my meditation cushion and journal. Um, and those are things I enjoy doing no matter what, but it adds to this experience of nurturing myself with something that I consider to be sacred medicine. Like I don't take it lightly that I'm ingesting this. For me, it's every other day. I'm doing one on, one off this round. And it allows it to feel like it's a part of my life in a way that it didn't the first round, where it was just like, oh, right, I forgot I have to take this thing really quick before I go to work, which is fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But again, it just allows it to be more intentional and more a part of like who I am, rather than just something I happen to do. And that is really important to me right now at this point in my life. Like I don't want to be someone who just does things. Like if I'm doing something, it's because it's a part of who I am and it's how I want to be expending my energy and exchanging with other people. I'm not just going to do it to do it. And that has allowed me to, create boundaries that keep my energy high and my vibes high, for lack of a better word. And, the medicine has really helped me. And again, that self-trust and that knowing of just like, no, I don't want to do that. That doesn't feel good to me. That doesn't feel like something I want to be. And I'm not going to do something just to do it. And so, beyond this feeling of connection and trust, it also allows me to feel more confident and grounded in who I am being and who I show up as, in the way that I embody my person. And so it's definitely multi-layered, and I don't think there's any limits to how it can serve you. Like you don't have to be coming from this place of trauma or grief, or I don't, it's not a one size fits all. It's
Yeah.
I think anyone and everyone would benefit from it, as long as there's some intention and structure and support along the way. But yeah, for me this time, it's really just been about making it something that is meaningful and purposeful and imbued with love and intention, and not just this thing
I
I
like
do.
that. Yeah, I like that reflection. That it really just kept stuck with me what you said about like I don't want to just do the thing to do the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it you said last time versus this time, so I'm correlating that like part of like the last time helped you reflect on slowing down a bit
Oh yeah, 100%.
and imbuing like what you want to get out of the medicine, but there's no right way, wrong way, just a bunch of different ways. And this is the Liz
Hmm.
way. This is what works for you. And you can pull different pieces from that and experiment a little bit. And I call it just joyful contemplation. It's like instead of doing the things just to do the things, like they're not things to do. It's actually something that I can enjoy. It's a joyful,
Hmm.
contemplative task, or it's play, right? It's I the checklist of work stuff. It's like, oh, it's just these are all things and tasks that I need to get done. It's like, what if you switch the perspective to actually I get to do these things because it's an advancing me towards my goals or my dreams or accomplishing my objectives instead of just like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm up. I'm gonna go to work. I'm gonna make my elixir. I'm gonna take my microdose, and I'm in cruise. I'm in cruise control, right?
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
I'm in this like parallel or peripheral like universe of just going from point A to point B to point C to point D instead of like slowing down, reminding ourselves that we have the ability to do this and what you said about like being in yourself, like your person referring to you, like that's not no one else, like Liz, like this is my
Hmm.
space, this is my sacred time with the medicine. And I think over time, um I really like the correlations that I heard is, you said like last time and then this time and then maybe next time, and it's like sounds like it's just like opening it's just opening you up more to the infinite possibilities of what lies ahead into the unknown, right? And like leaping into the unknown with courage, grace, humility, and overall trust in yourself, and not not taking the this for that mentality, or like doing the thing to do the thing. And like to I totally resonate with that because it's almost paradoxical that it's like, um okay, I'm microdosing. Let me see if I can get this thought out.
All good. Take your time.
I'm microdosing, and oh no, like I'm not doing it at the same time every morning, right? And I'm not staying on my day on, day off, day on, day off, and I'm not sitting and meditating for 20 minutes. Actually, like that there is the paradoxical effect of like maybe that's what I should look at, right? Like how awesome
Mhm.
is it that I get to do this, right? And I have the time and spaciousness and the infinite possibilities to sit with the medicine and meditate and breath work and journal and listen to my binaural music. But gosh darn it, I just didn't do it 4 days this week. Maybe that's the medicine showing you like, oh, am I like a perfectionist? Like, am
I
I
was going to say it has
right?
radically changed my
Yeah,
relationship
it's like
with my perfectionism. Yeah.
right, like this
Yeah.
illusion of perfectionism, and then like taking that a step further. I call it, be the Inspector Gadget with the big magnifying glass around the magnifying glass and be like, okay, like, am I a perfectionist here? Why am I being a perfectionist? Like, maybe I have this illusion of control. Like, why do I have this illusion of control? Like, oh, I want to feel like I'm perfect inside and out, and I am loved or validated more, or I love myself more, respect myself more when I can do everything in that like box or the framework of like the protocol, instead of
Hmm.
switching it to this is just a journey. And I didn't sleep well last night. So you know what? It's okay that I want to get an extra hour of sleep so I can show up for my full self and my client at 9 a.m. or whatever it is. And hopefully I can
Earlier than that.
early, whatever it might be. I don't know. Like I'm an early riser. I'm up with the sun every day. Um, so I so but yeah, and I always suggest doing like a a 90-day journey. And
Hmm.
I think 90 days is like, it's 12 weeks. It's a quarter, in business, a quarter of a year or a season, right? It's like solstice, equinox, or, equinox, solstice, however you want to look at it. And also too, from my experience of being in the 12-step recovery program, um,
Hmm.
people ask this question all the time, like, why 90 days? And it's like, philosophically, 90 days really is that gradual time that it takes to go from season to season, right?
Hmm.
Like, the leaves are
Hmm.
going to fall now, it's going to start getting colder, the days are getting shorter, and snow will start flying, right? So looking at it like we are nature and we are taking, medicine from the earth, we're not much different than nature. And um, during the 12 step, the early recovery days, it was suggested to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And I'm like,
Mm.
why would I do that? Why is that the suggested routine? But I took people's advice because they've done this before me. And I went to 88 meetings in 90 days, and I was mad at myself that I didn't do
For not going to
90,
the other two. Yeah.
but I did what's 88, that's like 97% or something.
Yeah.
So reflecting back on that through this whole process is like, oh, wow, I'm hard on myself, right? Like, don't be so hard on yourself, and like learn to just like relinquish those grips of being hard on yourself, for
Mhm.
like little practices, like I'm just,
Especially when you're doing something like getting clean and sober.
yeah, like
Be particularly nice to
you
yourself.
did pretty good,
Yeah.
so you did pretty good. Or like leave a dirty dish in the sink once in a while, or like maybe like don't make the bed a day, like that, like little stuff that annoys me, because
Hmm.
having that clean, organized space does give you that sense of control. It is a defense mechanism. It is a trauma response, probably from my childhood, growing up in a construction zone the first 3 years of my life, where it was probably just disorganized chaos all the time.
Hmm.
And that those gradual perspective shifts that the mushroom allows you to get over time is super profound. So I think the lesson is, hearing what you're saying, is like the 10 years, the experience prior with your husband, it's taking you all that time gradually to like come to this space, and you're still gradually working through. So this whole process is not a it's not the instant gratification that people want. And that's super powerful for people to hear. Is It's, again, it's not that like take this for that. Your problems aren't going to go, I don't think of them as problems. I think of them as obstacles, like the
Sure.
obstacles that are in the, you know there are no obstacles in the path. The obstacles are the path, and we just need to navigate around them. And having the tools, and the spiritual tools, and the mental tools, and the, microdose tools at your disposal, you're going to get the most out of it as you put in. So I am thoroughly impressed with your journey, and like it's really awesome. And thank
Thank
you so
you.
much for sharing. And
Yeah.
I hope that I hope that others hear, your journey in a way that resonates with them and helps them. And if you're um open to sharing that with other people, please do. Like, it's hard to open up as it is, but then more difficult to like maybe share that with others that might help them, you know cross the threshold that they need to cross to
Mm-hmm.
make those changes in their life. And if
Yeah.
if people want different, you can't have different without change. And you're doing it, I'm doing it, we're all doing it. It's just uh the way you're doing it is comes from a place of, I think, self-discovery and a little hunch that, the microdosing, the mushroom has just really just sprinkled its magic on that to allow you to keep doing it. Like you mentioned, like, oh, uh, it's like addictive. Like, I know that wasn't the word you were really looking
Looking
for.
for, yeah, but
I
what else am I going to use?
but addictive doesn't mean bad, right? Like,
Right.
people think addiction is bad, or addiction is, I think it's I used to say, like, sobriety is the new drug. Like, I'm addicted to feeling good, but it's like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to feel, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
instead of addiction, it's like, uh, I'm elated, right? Like, I am confident, or I'm a conscious observer of, like, I have a level of integrity with myself, and this newfound, I think of it as like innate wisdom, or like the pink cloud. Like, I'm just cruising through.
Mm.
Um, I'm cruising along in life, but I'm tapped into the navigational system of the universe versus
Hmm.
being in the driver's seat, just doing that. So,
Yep. Yep.
um,
For sure.
are there any last thoughts and wisdoms you can share with us, Liz, today? Um, this has been amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. I talk about it probably too much. My friends are probably like, okay, Liz, we get it. You're microdosing. Shut up. So I'm definitely trying to spread the love because it has changed my life. And I think it has that potential for everyone. So if you're on the fence, do it. Get yourself some goodies. Um, I do want to just highlight, you said something about, like just dealing, and I had said something about healing, and just kind of like that, it highlights the difference of like, okay, I was dealing with my trauma and now I'm healing with my trauma. And I don't think it ever goes away. Like you said, the grief is always going to be there in some form, but getting to this place where it is no longer something that I have to deal with. And instead of that feeling of just like, oh shit, here it is again, it's like, okay, here it is again, and I know how to be here for myself and hold space for myself and nurture myself through this experience because I've done the healing work. I no longer have to deal with it. I get to heal through it and grow through it. And I think that's just like the deal versus heal thing is like such a great little
Like that.
um yeah,
Or,
way to encapsulate how this can shift your perspective.
yeah, or you're really becoming whole and accepting our shadow. And
Mm-hmm.
you just describe shadow work at its finest. Is like, it doesn't go
Yeah.
away. It's just like, I'm looking at it from a different perspective, and I'm allowing it to
Mm-hmm.
be there, and I'm accepting it, and I am whole, and I am happy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a full embodied human being walking this earth,
Yep. Yep.
walking the earth with the rest of the bags of flesh that have a bunch of trauma within them as well, but maybe a bit
My
more
dad calls them bags of bones. Yeah.
bags of
Yeah.
bones with water, floating around in there. Uh, so thank you so much, Liz, and
Yeah. Thank you for having me. And thank you so much
yeah,
for what you're doing and
I
sharing with the
appreciate.
world.
Yeah, and share with others, and keep on keeping on. You know where to find us.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a
Cheers.
pleasure, Brian. Have a great night.
You too. Bye.
Bye.